Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the editor-in-chief of Total Retail, and I'm pleased to be joined on today's episode by Emily Arusha Hillique, who is the Senior Vice President of Private Brands at Macy's, as well as her colleague, Sam Archibald, who is the General Merchandise Manager of Apparel at Macy's. And we'll be talking to Emily and Sam about some exciting new developments in the menswear category for Macy's, the launch of its label Mode of One. So we're excited to talk to them today. Thank you for joining me, Emily, and Sam as well.
Thanks, Joe, for having us.
Thanks, Joe. Looking forward to the discussion.
Let's kind of start at the beginning here and talk a little bit about the decision, kind of the thought process behind why Macy's has decided to evolve its menswear assortment. I know we're going to talk a lot about kind of what you're doing in this category, but kind of start at the beginning. Why the evolution here, and what was the kind of thought process?
This is Sam, and thanks so much for having us today. This is my first podcast, so I'm super excited to be here and share the story around our men's assortment. So if you really back up a little bit, at Macy's, we have a very strong position in the men's business. We are a market share leader in men's apparel. And I think when we look back at our men's business, we started to notice that we weren't servicing our customer at 100%. And we want to be there for our customer every single day, no matter what the wearing occasion is. And when you step back and you look at who our customers are, we have a very strong position with diverse consumers. It's something we're very proud about, and that's who we assort to. And part of our Bold New Chapter strategy, which Tony Spring, our CEO, really rolled out over the last year, is really designed to create a more modern Macy's. And when we stepped back and looked at our customer experience and who we were trying to serve, I think what we found is that we were underserving a very important segment of our consumer. In particular, we have a very strong position in our men's fragrance business, as an example. And we noticed that this consumer wasn't necessarily shopping all of our apparel brands and apparel assortments. So we saw a big opportunity to really expand the lifestyles that we offered. We talk a lot about life stage. And when you think about life stage, consumers are different periods of their lives and they dress differently depending on that period. And we also thought a lot about quality and value. So Mode of One launch, which is what we're talking about today, is really part of a larger strategy to revitalize our contemporary and modern assortment in our men's business. And that really aligns with the consumer demand that we have. So the ecosystem that we've developed here, we've launched over the last basically 18 months. We've launched Hugo Blue. We have a new interpretation of the Karl Lagerfeld business. We brought a new brand into our assortment called All Good Things Are Welcome Here. And if you haven't seen that brand, you guys should all check it out. Nike, we had a dark moment with Nike where we didn't offer Nike products for a period of time. We reintroduced Nike into our assortments. And we've also expanded our Fanatics business where we've been able to drive the accessory business and the sports business. So Mode of One it doesn't stand alone. It's an add into our assortment, part of our ongoing private brand reimagination. And really what we focused on is relevant product that consumers want to buy at the right values and with a lot of great fashion sitting within the presentation. So we're really excited about it, and it's part of a broader strategy to get more relevant and get closer to our consumer.
So I should note this as your first podcast, as I do many of these, Sam, I must say, and it's appropriate given the conversation we're having about menswear, you're probably one of the best dressed guests I've had. You look great, and I'm assuming wearing some of Macy's menswear. So while the audience can't see you, I can see you on the back end here, and you're wearing the product, I'm sure, and you look great.
I appreciate that.
So I guess I would follow up to your response, Sam, in terms of, and Emily and Sam, what can they expect from the kind of this new transition, this new chapter in Macy's menswear? What would the consumer, what they should be looking for? What are they expecting?
I can take that just from a Mode of One specifically, and to give a little bit more color, even in what the setup that Sam just shared. Mode of One is part of a multi year multi-brand private brand reimagination journey. And as Tony Spring, our CEO, notes, with our bold new chapter strategy, the role of private brands is to fill white space within the broader enterprise brand portfolio. And we've been working tirelessly over the last 2 years, elevating our private brand portfolio with newness, improving quality, fit, and design, all with the customer at the center. And Motive One is a really great example for that taking shape in men's. So Motive One, a little bit more color around it within the men's broader portfolio, is our new contemporary menswear brand. And as we believe, as Sam stated, this strengthens Macy's fashion leadership in general, but more specifically fashion leadership in private brands within the men's area. It's a clear complement to everything else that Sam mentioned we have going on within the national brand space. But one of the things I'm most proud about is not only in the total private brand reimagination journey, but more specifically within Motive One, we're designing human-centered brands with the customer's voice at the center of everything we do. And what we learned from our customer on multi-year customer journeys is they're looking for elevated trend, they're looking for better quality, and they're looking for cultural relevancy in our brands, in our products, and in the stories that we tell. And so Motive One was built to capture this idea that all of the men that we connected with were looking for dynamic clothing for their modern lifestyle, and they know that style is powerful. It's their calling card for how they show up in the world, and they love being able to stand out as an individual when they want to, but very clearly then blend into the community that they are in as well. And so we saw an opportunity to serve this customer in a more robust way. And like Sam mentioned, the beauty of Macy's is we know this customer is in our store. They're shopping fragrances, they're shopping accessories, shoes, and all the brands that Sam mentioned. And so we love that Motive One is a perfect complement and an adjunct to add to their wardrobe.
Which actually is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about next in terms of kind of the consumer influence on, specifically, we've talked a little bit about Motive One collection, but I guess it can extend also across your menswear categories. How do you leverage some of that, obviously significant physical footprint across, then all of the digital interactions that Macy's is having with consumers. So there's this vast data set that you're collecting and learning about consumers. And then also what they're telling you, just outright coming out and telling you, whether it's through social channels, through conversations they're having with call service, and store associates. So talk a little bit about the influence of the consumer and their feedback on what you're doing specifically within menswear at Macy's.
I think we could take it maybe in a two-part kind of answer, because I think Emily's leadership with the design team in terms of studying this consumer and making them part of the process in terms of how we built the brand and brought it to market is really interesting. And honestly, Joe, I'm less eloquent in terms of describing that. But what I think consumers can expect from us is we're listening to them. And we have a lot of data, and we're able to understand, sure, there's data that talks about price points and how consumers shop it by channel and store and online. But I think the data that matters most, from my point of view, is newness sells. And the consumer is looking for new brands, new ways to express themselves, and even new fits. And even in the menswear world, one of the big breakthroughs is that men's over time had a very standard fit kind of profile. And new consumers, younger consumers in particular, are looking for newer fits and how to express themselves differently. So I think we, through data and also understanding who our consumers are in terms of cross-shop, I mentioned men's fragrances. I mentioned our kind of new set of brands that we're offering. We understand what they're looking for, what trends are working within our business, and how to drive that trend-centered approach to merchandising and buying. That will be something our customers will see differently on our floors. The way we are lifestyle merchandising on the website, if you get a chance to go to Macys.com and check out Motive One, it is styled in a way that our consumers want to see the product styled. One of my favorite items, as an example, is a hoodie that we have that has incredible art on it that says Destination Nowhere. It's one of our best sellers right now. So I hope that it's still up and live by the time this airs. But it's a very good example of us understanding the influx of newness in the business, the trends that are driving that, and who our consumer really is. And that's a position of strength that we have. And I, quite frankly, Joe, I feel that we were underserving our consumer for a period of time. And this brand allows us to serve them in a fuller way, along with all the other things that we're doing in the business.
I think one other thing I would add to that, Joe, is, we talk a lot at Macy's about, data-driven decisions, but decisions that are well balanced in art and science. And I think, what Sam articulated really well is it's taking the data that we have around the consumer that we have and their wants and needs, but it's also pairing that with the art of what we do. And we know customers want inspiration, right? They want to discover, they want to see what's new and next. And we want to inspire them with taste-making relevancy and product newness. And one of the things that we do within Macy's to ensure that we're doubling down on the art portion of things, we have built up a trend research and forecasting team that studies data points around, macro consumer influences and shifts that are happening out there, right? We study, what's happening globally from a fashion and a trend standpoint, what's happening within US street style, what's happening within runways. And we also have done extensive research with our customer to also learn a little bit more about how they live their lives and what they care about, and making sure that we're building that data and pairing it with that art into the brand DNAs that we're building, into the stories we're trying to tell. And I think Sam mentioned with Motive One specifically, if you look on our social channels, if you look on our digital channel and our in-store setups, really taking more of a 360 storytelling and marketing approach to this brand to ensure that all of those inspection points are taken into account so that crisply the consumer feels like not only Motive One, but our entire men's brand portfolio was made for them.
You must have been reading my mind, Emily, because I was going to ask about not only the data that you're collecting within the four walls of Macy's stores and obviously your digital properties as well, but kind of that external, those industry trends that are happening and kind of the fashion world. And you're kind of layering that into what you're producing and what you're presenting to your customers as well. So you really answered my follow-up question quite well there. I want to talk a little bit, and this is probably not something new to either of you, but staying competitive. Obviously, the fashion world, super competitive, new brands, the newness factor, Sam, that you talked about, but then there's obviously, the tried and true brands that people rely on. Tell us a little bit about your approach to staying competitive in that fast-paced world, balancing kind of that newness with also staying true to what your customer goes back to again and again as well. You don't want to lose that loyal customer as you think about newness. So tell us a little bit about the approach at Macy's for that.
Yeah, from a competition standpoint, I think, first of all, I think that's a great question, Joe. And I think there are a couple of ways to remain competitive in the marketplace. Of course, if you go in the industry, people will talk about price and all of these pieces. That is important, but it's really not all about that. So I think there are two things that we really think about. Number one, to remain competitive, you have to understand the consumer that you have. And as we discussed earlier, we have a strong position in the men's space, and we don't want to alienate any of our current consumers. So I think we have to listen to them carefully and make sure in the brands that these customers are most important in, we still have a robust offer, but still move them forward. And I could give multiple examples across our portfolio where we're able to make sure that we still bring newness and innovation to our most loyal customers who shop our biggest brands. The next step on the competition approach is you have to stay ahead of the consumer. So if the consumer is moving towards, and again, I think this is happening in the menswear space really post-COVID, wearing occasions have changed dramatically in men's. And what used to be a more standardized wardrobe has changed, and a man's closet has a lot more wearing occasions and a lot more categories within it. And I think we identified that quite early in the process post-COVID, and we're able to really identify that and stay ahead. This consumer is going to dress probably more casually, more trend forward, with more tech details probably, and have more of an active lifestyle than they did 2019 and prior. So I think staying ahead of the consumer, making sure we're servicing them where they are in their life stage, but also not erasing all of our history. So I think it's all about balancing those two things. And I think the team is doing a really good job of that. Motive One is a great example of that. It is inspired by our customers. As Emily talked about before, a lot of research went into understanding what are the wearing occasions? How's he spending his time? How's he going out? How does he want to show up confident in his style? And as we've kind of launched this brand, we've gotten that feedback from our consumers that this is what they're looking for. So I think staying ahead of the consumer is key. And I think this brand is a really, really good example of that.
So you've done all of this research and you've kind of done this work behind the scenes in large part in terms of getting to know more about the consumer, what they want, what they need. The next thing is then going to market with this, right? And making sure the consumer is aware that Macy's offers these products, this new collection. So thinking about going to market, tell us a little bit about the efforts that you're taking at Macy's to create consumer awareness, both for potential new customers to Macy's, also those existing customers. Sam, you talked about that just now, to gain kind of that foothold in the menswear space.
Well, I would say we took a different approach this time to create awareness and drive conversion for the launch of Motive One. So we kicked off the launch with a social first marketing campaign. And like I mentioned before, more of a 360 approach. We utilized influential voices and creators kind of who embody the brand's values of confidence, style, self-expression, individuality, with an event during New York Fashion Week. Headlining the campaign, we've got several ambassadors, which we're very proud of. So the New York Knicks basketball stars, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, they serve as key ambassadors for the brand and have been awesome partners for this inaugural collection. And as accomplished athletes, Jalen and Josh, they exemplify that determination and authenticity and style sophistication that we know is not only inspiring for our current customer, but hopefully will help us acquire a new customer as well. In addition to that, we have other strategic partnerships that we have as well. So we had Vic Blends, Instagram star, Atlanta-based barber, known for his content he creates to get people, through his haircuts. If you have not tuned into his social media channels, he's extremely inspiring and known for his style and his podcast, Deep Cut. We've got Kwame Anwashi, who's a very famous New York-based chef and author and restaurateur, a former contestant on Top Chef, has been a great advocate for the brand as well. And then we took a really unique approach. Sam mentioned the Destination Nowhere graphic on our sweatshirts. We hired a graphic designer, Tyrell Waters, who, brought in more of that street influenced art style into the collection and has done beautiful pieces of art, not only for the launch collection, but as we go through, and you'll see drops come in of his work every single month. And then we also partnered with Ouija Theodore, the founder of Brooklyn Circus, who brought in all of his stylist credibility for the collection. So he styled the campaign and the lookbooks and has just brought an amazing energy into the collection. So when I think about all of the internal, design and trend and textile and, merchant talent that we had working on this product, in addition to all of these external ambassadors, it really gives a lot of energy and vibrancy to Motive One, much different than we've done in the past.
Seems to be a very digital heavy focus as well, right? Connecting with that consumer first, potentially through a digital channel. And then obviously there is the opportunity to go in store as well to kind of get that in real life experience, touching the product, trying it on, feeling it. So kind of the marrying of those two channels as you think about getting that awareness out there as well, Emily.
Yes, exactly. And we're leaning into, lots of new experiential sort of environments within our First 50 stores, specifically kind of these incubation stores that, represent kind of the modern look of Macy's. And so exactly like you just described, bringing that inspiration and that experience into the store is key to that 360 approach. No matter what channel the consumer wants to engage with us in, they will have a very consistent experience as it relates to the brand.
Well, that's great. I want to take the opportunity to thank Emily Arusha Hillque, as well as her colleague Sam Archibald, both of Macy's, for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks and going through Macy's bold new chapter in menswear, particularly through the launch of its Motive One label. So thank you to Emily and Sam for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.